In 1940, the United States Army was a ghost. It had fewer than 500 tanks. Its air force was smaller than Portugal's. To the veteran generals of the German Wehrmacht, America wasn't a threat, it was a joke. But then, the sleeping giant didn't just wake up, it turned into a global factory. What followed wasn't just an army, it was an avalanche of steel, aluminum, and gunpowder so massive that it literally buried the Axis powers under the weight of their own mathematics. Forget the brilliant tactics of Rommel or the invincible Tiger tanks. The most terrifying weapon America ever unleashed wasn't a bomb, it was the factory floor. Today, we are looking at the 10 production numbers that made the Axis realize they weren't fighting a war, they were fighting an industrial machine that didn't know how to stop. At number 10, we have the bazooka. Before 1942, a single German tank could paralyze an entire infantry company. Then, American industry decided to give every soldier the power of a tank killer. They didn't just build a few, they built 476,000. Suddenly, every hedge in Normandy and every foxhole in the Pacific held a lethal surprise. It wasn't about the best weapon, it was about putting a good enough weapon in 500,000 hands. At number 9, the B-24 Liberator. While the B-17 got the movies, the B-24 got the production lines. At Henry Ford's Willow Run plant, they achieved the impossible. One complete heavy bomber every 63 minutes. Imagine being a German commander watching 1,000 bombers darken the sky, knowing that by the time you shot one down, Ford had already built 10 more. With over 18,400 built, the sky literally belonged to the highest bidder. We have to talk about the Sherman at number 7. Historians love to argue that the Panther was a better tank, but in the war of attrition, better is a relative term. The Germans treated their tanks like irreplaceable jewels, the Americans treated them like cars. While Germany struggled to build 6,000 Panthers, America's Detroit arsenal churned out 49,000 Shermans. For every Sherman a Tiger destroyed, there were 5 more already on a ship crossing the Atlantic. The Axis weren't defeated by superior armor, they were drowned in a sea of medium tanks that never stopped coming. Eisenhower called the Jeep one of the 3 weapons that won the war. At number 4, with 650,000 units, the Jeep made the American Army the only truly mobile force on Earth. While German soldiers were still leading horses through the mud, the American GI was driving. This wasn't just convenience, it was a strategic advantage that allowed the Allies to move, retreat, and strike faster than the Axis could even communicate. And finally, at number 1, it isn't a tank, a plane, or a ship. It is the .50 caliber Browning machine gun cartridge. This half-inch piece of brass was the common denominator of American power. It was in the wings of every P-51, on the deck of every ship, and on the back of every Jeep. American factories produced an amount of ammunition that the human mind can barely comprehend. 12 billion rounds. If you lined those bullets up, they would wrap around the Earth multiple times. This was the physical manifestation of democracy. It was a river of lead that flowed from the American heartland to every corner of the globe. It was the reason a German soldier could never find cover, and a Japanese pilot could never find safety. The numbers tell a story of a brutal asymmetry. Safe behind 2 oceans, American industry operated at a maximum capacity that the Axis couldn't even dream of. Every lost German tank was a national tragedy. Every lost American tank was a line item in a ledger. This wasn't just a war of brave men, it was a war of the arsenal of democracy. The Axis had the Übermensch philosophy, but the Americans had the assembly line, and in the end, the assembly line won. So we ask you, is it possible for a nation to win a war purely through the power of its factories, or did the bravery of the soldiers matter more than the 12 billion bullets? If you were a German commander in 1944, At what point would you have looked at these numbers and realized it was over? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If you want to see the specific illegal weapons that these factories produced, check out our video on the Forgotten Arsenal right here. Don't forget to subscribe to help us hit our own production goals. See you in the next analysis.